wow. Just wow. This episode completely exceeded my expectations. Oh my god. I'm going to say this right now. This is the best episode of The Flash thus far. This even tops the season 1 finale last year. I mean, I never. I knew this was gonna be fun. I didn't know this was gonna pack the gut punch and have the surprises that it did. It was brilliantly written, brilliantly acted. Had so many twists and turns thrown. It's damn near perfect. And at the time I'm recording this video right now, I should be watching Agent Carter, but I just had to get my thoughts out there just like immediately, just while I'm still in this state, because this is just so fucking incredible episode. I mean, first of all, it starts off with Barry and Cisco trying to get their bearings. Barry's having a family dinner with Joe and Iris, telling them about the plan. He doesn't want to tell Henry because he feels like he's going to talk Barry out of going on this trip with Harry and Cisco to Earth 2 to rescue Jesse and save Earth 2 from Zoom's wrath. It comes off as, and Iris tells Barry that to make sure he's going for the right reasons and not just going because, he doesn't feel like he has anything to hold on to after Patty left, and he says he still has family to come back to, and he will. And Iris tells him come back in one piece, but they decide that. But Barry makes an ultimatum saying that if they're not back within 48 hours, just to close the breach, and it was. Even like Cisco left a letter to Caitlin to make sure that his family got a letter telling the Ramon family that he loves them, and it has this like really awesome scene where Barry uses his speed to take Harry and Cisco through the breach, and you see all these like images of multiple Earths and different images. You see like a version of Green Arrow. You can't quite make out all of them. I mean, there's one of Green Arrow. I don't know if that's the Connor Hawke version that's supposed to be in Legends of Tomorrow. Probably not. Maybe it's what is it? The Robert Queen version on Earth 2. You got to see an image of Melissa Benoist as Supergirl, just to foreshadow the crossover that's coming March 28th, where the Flash is going to be appearing on an episode of Supergirl, and it kind of makes you speculate like how the crossover is going to work, what's going to bring Barry over to her Earth. And there are other images like a guy in like a Indiana Jones kind of like hat and a gun, and eventually they make it over and they see like this 1920s Art Deco kind of look of Earth 2, and they even bump into one of the first doppelgangers that they bump into is I think it was like Takamak, or he was supposed to be the Firestorm candidate in episode 4 of the show, and this is when he turned evil, and that he was defeated by Jay Jackson and Martin Stein's Firestorm. Then of course, Firestorm and Barry's in it, and they go to Harry's office. They see they mention how apparently Leonard Snart's now the mayor of Central City and Earth 2, and how Zoom's reign of terror has gotten worse since there's been no Flash to protect Earth 2 Central City. And Barry's doppelganger, Earth 2 Barry, shows up on the TV talking to reporters, saying they're going to do everything. He's working with Detective West to do everything they can to stop Zoom, and how there's this like mandatory curfew now, and Zoom's basically taking over the city. And he wears glasses and like a bow tie. It's kind of like much more dorkier. So Barry gets the idea that because the problem is like Cisco's Earth 1 and Earth 2 both have vibrate at different frequencies, so Cisco's glasses, vibe glasses don't work, so they can't find Jesse immediately. So Barry decides to grab his own his doppelganger. His doppelganger starts geeking out over Wells, and even Barry just seems to, and Barry just seems to be just as annoyed as Harry that that Earth 2 Barry is like even dorkier version than he is. So Barry tasers him, and decides to impersonate Earth 2 Barry and go to CCPD to find out what they know about Zoom. And while he's there, he finds out that Captain Singh is a mob boss. Deadshot Floyd Lawton, played by Michael Rowe, same actor, works at the police state. Works as a cop, and he hates the nickname Deadshot just because his aim is actually pretty poor. It's like piss poor, and he's made fun of at the police station for it. And it's kind of this like bumbling cop, which, you know, I'm not really crazy about that idea, but I'm used to seeing like, you know, Floyd Lawton as a badass. But maybe part 2 next week. Anyway, he turns out to be the partner of Detective West, who happens to be Iris West, and it turns out that Barry and Iris are married. Huge West Allen shipper. They're officially married on Earth 2, and basically they get off work, and instead of being able to find information about Zoom, Iris takes Barry home because and he has to keep up this ruse that that Earth 1 Barry is the Earth 2 Barry. And so there's like this kind of scene where like he gets kind of uncomfortable, where like Iris is getting undressed and like putting on like a nightgown, and he had this really, and Grant Gustin has this really powerful emotional scene where it turns out that Earth 2, his mom's alive on Earth 2, and he has this like, he nearly breaks down over the phone talking to his mom alive and well, and how they're going to be going on this cruise, and, you know, maybe, and she's talking about how they're thinking about giving their cruise tickets to Barry and Iris, and Barry just tells them that, no, I want you guys to be happy. I want you guys to be happy, and he's just like so like crying. Like I guess it's like these tears of joy that I guess that the parents are happily married. No, you know, one's not dead and the other's not in prison. And oh, what was the next scene? I guess like they go to Jitterbugs, or Jitters on Earth 1, and it turns out Joe's a lounge singer, so you get to hear Jesse L. Martin. I mean, he's done, you know, he has, the guy can sing. I mean, anybody knows Jesse L. Martin's like profile. Like, he's done both the movie version and the Broadway version of Rent, so you get to see an excuse to, you know, see his singing chops on the show. It turns out that Barry and Joe on Earth 2 don't get along, and Joe blames Barry for wanting to further his career and going to school to get his PhD in that, and blames Barry for why Iris had to give up her dreams of becoming a journalist at Picture News and had to become a cop. But Iris just explains that, you know, she was taught to be tough, and she didn't really, that the internship was just that her work at Picture News was just what is it? It's an internship. Like she didn't really care about it. She didn't see herself as a real writer. And then of course you see the appearance of Robbie Amell and Caitlin Frost, both as Deathstorm and Killer Frost respectively. And there was this earlier scene where they established themselves as like killing some robbers, like stealing money, and how Zoom owns this town, and apparently they work for Zoom, and apparently both of them work for Zoom. And there's also and apparently they're aware of there's a breach there. They somehow found out that there are people breachers from Earth 1 have come to Earth 2, As Caitlin Frost asks which one of you guys is in the wrong universe, Barry tries to keep Iris from making a scene, and Barry tries to reason with Caitlin, and it ends up with a standoff between Iris and the evil doppelgangers, and for some reason Barry doesn't show off his speed, so Joe ends up being attacked by Deathstorm, and while Iris goes to Joe's aid, Barry rushes out, Killer Frost and Deathstorm, and then this battle is on, and Barry's dodging these like icicles from Killer Frost and fireballs from Deathstorm, and eventually he's able to grab a Jay Garrick's helmet, which is on a statue, and deflect one of Deathstorm's fireballs towards Killer Frost, just to force them to retreat. Iris and Joe go to he takes Iris and Joe to the hospital. Harry chastises Barry because these are strangers to you. They're not your They're not the real. It's these are strangers to you. The people that you know are back on Earth 1. And Barry just has this heated argument where he says that Iris and Joe are his family, no matter what mind, body, and soul, no matter what universe they're in. And he feels and Harry's just pissed off because he wants to find his daughter, and he's being sidetracked by all this stuff going on with his family and getting emotionally sucked in, as Jay warned them all not to do. So so both Barry and Iris are at Joe's bedside, and Joe has this moment where he just says, every time I'm on stage, he says, this one's for Iris, and the mantra he tells himself before he performs, and tells Barry to take care of Iris, and then he flatlines and dies, which really, that was a gut punch for me, and it was just, this was mind-blowing. I just couldn't, I never thought, this is a credit to both the writing and the actors. They have really good actors on this show. The fact that I can get emotionally attached and still feel as bad as Barry probably does about what happens to them, even though the main character, their Earth 1 versions are still fine. But then it finally leads to Cisco comes with Barry to CCPD. Iris and Lawton are about to go after Killer Frost and Deathstorm. Cisco has brought a device to neutralize both of them, and they both show up, and so basically Cisco, Lawton, and Iris confront the evil Frost and Deathstorm. Cisco's just shocked at the sight of his friends, as evil metahumans. Cisco even asks if Martin Stein is still merged with Ronnie, and he says, I haven't let him out in years. I don't even hear his voice anymore. And then, of course, I think probably one of the biggest shockers of the entire episode was that Killer Frost and Deathstorm don't work directly for Zoom. They work for Cisco's doppelganger known as Reverb. And he has full access to all of Cisco's powers, including seeing the multiverse. He's the one who anticipated them coming over and warned Killer Frost and Deathstorm about them. And he'd also be able to use this earthquake powers, just like the comic book version. It's even the same special effect they used for Daisy Johnson on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he uses that to both subdue Lawton, as well as, Barry comes in and saves it. And even before that, Reverb tries to convince Cisco to help him take over the city and teach him how to use the full access of his powers. And even Cisco makes a line saying, "Are you trying to Cloud City Darth Vader me?" And he, of course, rejects the offer and shoots Killer Frost. And then Deathstorm starts attacking, and then Barry rushes in his Flash costume, trying to get gets Iris off to the side. Reverb uses his earthquake powers on Lawton, since he doesn't even get one shot and hit Reverb, and I guess presumably kills him. And then Reverb and Deathstorm are both like using their powers on Barry, trying to subdue him. And an injured Killer Frost is telling them to stop. You know what Zoom would do to you if you don't bring them in alive. And then Zoom shows up and impales both Ronnie for disobeying, Deathstorm for disobeying him, and Reverb for doing this. Not only doing the same thing, but he tried to propose to just Cisco, Killer Frost, and Deathstorm. They take Zoom, they overthrow Zoom and take over the city. And so Zoom kills Reverb and chokes out Killer Frost in unconsciousness, knowing that it's good to know at least one of you knows where your place is. And then he grabs the Flash and runs off. And Killer Frost is heartbroken that Ronnie's dead. And I was a little bit shocked that I would have thought that at least like maybe I would have liked to see that a storyline like that play out about the evil meta doppelgangers trying to overthrow Zoom, or at least Caitlin and Ronnie's doppelgangers going over to Earth 1. But then of course on what's going on Earth 1 is that as soon as Barry, Harry, and Cisco went through the breach, one of the part of the speed cannons like short-circuited, and it shut the breach. It shut the breach behind them, so they have no way of getting back to Earth 1. And Jay was trying to work on it, and Jay reveals that the reason, and there's a metahuman named Geomancer attacking the city, and Jay's forced to reluctantly take Velocity 6, or at least a modified Velocity 7 version, is because the reason why he never wanted Barry to use Velocity 6 is because Jay was depending on it. He was hooked on it, and I guess that was really ultimately the source of his powers. He was never able to properly sustain. He was never able to properly sustain his own speed like Barry is. It was more like artificial. And the side effect of the Velocity 6 was that it was also killing Jay, as what gave him his illness. But in order to stop Geomancer's rampage, Jay has to take Velocity 7. He tries to fight Geomancer, but the Velocity 7 wears off, and nearly gets killed by Geomancer until Joe comes in and has to shoot at Geomancer to scare him off. And the episode ends where Barry's in prison with both Jesse and some other guy in a mask who's tapping on the glass of his prison, and Zoom warning him that this is going to be the last place he ever sees while he's alive. And like I said, I'd give it like a 9.5 out of 10, just because I didn't like the fact that Floyd Lawton was this klutz, and I hated that Cisco and Evil Cisco and Evil Ronnie were killed off so soon. But it's going to be an interesting conclusion to see where they go from there. I'm a little pessimistic of that part 2 won't be able to pack the punch of Earth part 1, but again, this was such an incredible episode. I had to get my thoughts there immediately after, and I'm just blown away by this episode. I love it. It was so good. It was just damn good television. What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below what your predictions are for next week, what you thought of the episode, etc. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you soon. Tonight, I'm going to work on my Supergirl review from Monday. Also going to upload Agent Carter once it gets online, and also just the usual, Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow, and just try to stay more on track with my reviews this week than I have in previous weeks. So Yeah, guys, this was fantastic. I love this episode. I hope you watch. I just can't wait for next week. Take care, guys.